Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
Hi, Calvin. I was born on November 7th, 1953 in Killeen, Texas, right near Fort Hood, where my father was stationed. My given name was Carl Eugene Watts, though a lot of people grew up knowing me by a slight variation of that name.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
Just 3 days after I was born, my family moved back to West Virginia, but we eventually settled in Detroit, Michigan, which is where I really grew up. My father, Richard Eugene Watts, was a private first class in the Army, and my mother, Dorothy Mae Young, was a kindergarten art teacher. They separated when I was young, and my mother later remarried a man who had 6 children of his own. Together they had 2 more, so it was a massive, bustling household. I didn't get a whole lot of individual attention. I was mostly a very shy, quiet, and introverted boy who kept everything bottled up inside.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
My mother called me Carl, but a childhood friend misspelled it as Coral on a card once, and that nickname just stuck with me for the rest of my life. Decades later, as law enforcement tried to make sense of the trail I left behind in Michigan, the media slapped me with a much darker moniker, the Sunday Morning Slasher. They called me that because I would target women in the early morning hours, usually on Sundays.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
When I was 8 years old, my sister and I contracted meningitis, and I also came down with polio. I had to be hospitalized at Herman Kiefer Hospital, completely isolated, enduring agonizing spinal taps. My fever got so high that doctors worried about brain damage. I missed the entire 3rd grade, and after that, my grades suffered and my attention span plummeted. I found an outlet through sports. I was a great baseball and football player and a track star. I managed to graduate from high school with my mother's help in 1973, and I even got a football scholarship to Lane College in Tennessee. I played running back there until a severe knee injury sidelined me, and I dropped out after just 3 months. Later on, I tried taking engineering classes at Western Michigan University, but I slacked off and spent my time playing ping pong instead.
Was there a specific moment when you realized you were fundamentally different from everyone else?
It really became clear when doctors examined me at the Lafayette Mental Clinic when I was 15, and again when I had a checkup at 20. The psychological evaluations noted that I had a passive-aggressive orientation to life, struggled severely with my sexuality, and harbored a powerful, dark impulse to beat up women. A forensic psychiatrist later observed that I actually felt good after attacking females, but noted there was no evidence of psychosis. I knew inside that I was battling homicidal urges that normal people simply didn't have.
What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
In 1981, I made the decision to move down to Houston, Texas. Police in Michigan were starting to zero in on me as a suspect in several local attacks and murders, so I packed up my tools and left town. At the time, it felt like a quick way to escape the heat, but moving to Houston changed everything. In 1981, Houston was considered a murder capital with over 700 homicides. The police force was completely overwhelmed, and it became an unmonitored hunting ground where I could continue my dark routine without anyone realizing a single man was behind it.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement, and what were the consequences?
My very first run-in with the law happened on June 25th, 1969, when I was only 15 years old. I was working a paper delivery route in Detroit, and I randomly attacked a 26-year-old woman, punching her in the face until she screamed, before calmly finishing my route. 4 days later, the police arrested me at my house. I told them I just felt like beating someone up. The consequence was being sent to the Lafayette Mental Clinic for a forensic psychiatric evaluation.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It was in August of 1982 when the details of my plea deal hit the national news. I had been caught months earlier and a bargain was struck where I agreed to confess to 12 unsolved homicides in Texas in exchange for total immunity on those murders and a 60-year sentence for burglary. When the public and the victims' families realized that an admitted serial killer had secured immunity and could eventually be legally released from prison due to Texas mandatory release laws, a massive media blitz erupted. My name became synonymous with a major controversy in the justice system.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
The public notoriety didn't change my actions because I was already locked away by the time the full scale came to light. It simply exposed the sheer volume of the devastation I had caused. I was a cold-blooded killing machine, using methods like stalking, stabbing, strangling, and drowning. I never sexually assaulted my victims, and I only took tiny trinkets as trophies. The national attention just stripped away my mask as an ordinary bus mechanic and showed the world the scope of my crimes, which authorities suspect to total anywhere from 40 to over 100 victims.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
My own overconfidence and a victim who refused to die are what brought me down. In May of 1982, I broke into a Houston apartment and took 2 women captive, tying them up and attempting to drown one of them, Melinda Lister, in the bathtub. But her roommate, Lori Aguilar, managed to escape by throwing herself off a second-story balcony with her hands still bound. She alerted the neighbors, the police arrived, and they caught me right as I was trying to flee the scene.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People are always surprised to learn that during my marriage to my wife, Valeria, in the late 1970s, she noticed a very strange and disturbing habit. She said that I would have intense nightmares and would physically fight unseen forces in my sleep. I was wrestling with my dark impulses even while completely unconscious.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
The public never understood the intense, exhausting pressure of carrying these secrets while trying to blend into everyday life. When investigators in Michigan first started putting 24-hour surveillance on me in 1980, the pressure got so intense that I couldn't take it anymore. I remember telling a lead detective that I just didn't want to talk anymore right before I skipped town for Texas.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My defining adversaries were the persistent detectives from Michigan who refused to let my case go cold, and a Houston crime victims advocate named Andy Kahan. Even after I secured my immunity deal in Texas, those individuals formed a task force, tracked down an old eyewitness from a 1974 Michigan homicide, and worked tirelessly to ensure I would never walk out of a prison door.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
While the courts were debating my legal status, I was privately using my time behind bars to become a jailhouse lawyer. I studied the system intensely, tracking my good behavior days because I knew the exact date I was legally eligible for parole. I fought a quiet, tactical battle within the legal system to secure my freedom, openly telling people that if they ever released me, I was going to kill again.
What was your darkest moment, and was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
The darkest moment was realizing that my legal strategy had completely failed. I thought I had outsmarted the system with the Texas immunity deal, but in 2004, the past caught up to me when I was brought back to Michigan to face a courtroom for a murder I committed 30 years prior. Standing there knowing that my release was no longer possible was a total defeat.
What truth was hardest to escape when you were alone at night?
The hardest truth to escape was that I couldn't resist my own nature. I wouldn't confess outright to every single murder because I didn't want the world to view me as a mass murderer. But alone at night, the sheer volume of the women I stalked and killed from Michigan to Texas was an undeniable reality that defined my entire existence.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
After my initial arrest in Houston for the apartment attack, I pleaded guilty to burglary with intent to commit murder and received a 60-year sentence. Decades later, as my Texas release date approached, Michigan officials brought new charges against me. In 2004, thanks to an eyewitness named Joe Foy, I was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder for the 1982 slaying of Helen Dutcher. Then, in 2007, I was convicted for the 1974 stabbing death of a college student named Gloria Steele, who had been stabbed over 30 times. The final legal outcome was 2 consecutive sentences of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you? And what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The biggest exaggeration is the rumor regarding my motives. Because I targeted so many young women, people naturally assumed there was a sexual element or a robbery motive to my crimes. The truth is much stranger. I never sexually assaulted anyone, and if I took anything from them, it was just small, worthless trinkets. The media tried to find a standard motive, but I killed simply because of an unyielding, destructive impulse.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that I was completely insane or out of touch with reality. The courts and multiple psychiatric experts explicitly ruled that I did not suffer from psychosis and was fully competent to stand trial. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I was entirely aware of the rules of the game I was playing with the law.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
It would surprise people to know how ordinary my work life was. I spent years working a regular job as an automotive and bus mechanic, showing up for shifts, fixing engines, and blending perfectly into the blue-collar workforce of Detroit and Houston while harboring a horrific double life.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on September 21st, 2007 at a medical center in Jackson, Michigan, while serving out my life sentences. I was 53 years old and my death was caused by prostate cancer.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
My downfall was caused by my own flaws and the sheer persistence of the victims' families. The world didn't change to catch me, but the people I harmed refused to let the system forget who I was, tracking down the evidence needed to lock me away for good, right when I thought I was going to walk free.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
I carried the weight of my actions without offering public deathbed apologies. If I could erase the decision to break into that Houston apartment in 1982, perhaps my life would have taken a completely different path, and I would have walked out of prison a free man. But my impulses were a part of who I was, and I lived out the consequences of those choices until the end.
What scared you more? Getting caught? Losing power? Or being forgotten?
Losing my power and being kept in a cage for the rest of my life scared me the most. I thrived on the control I held during my actions, and being stripped of that mobility, forced to face a lifetime behind bars in Michigan, was my ultimate fear realized.
When you look back now, do you see yourself as the villain, the hero, or something in between?
There is no doubt that history and society view me entirely as a vicious villain and one of the most prolific predators in American history. I can't claim to be anything else when my legacy is a long trail of unsolved heartbreaks across multiple states. I am the villain of this story, plain and simple.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I just want to say that the mask of an ordinary neighbor can hide things you would never suspect. Pay attention to the people around you because you never truly know who is walking the streets on a Sunday morning. Thank you for the conversation, Calvin.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.